Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Last summer, I landed a gig working a 3-day indie music festival. Pretty straightforward setup, 12 bands per day, mostly indie rock and alternative stuff. My boss Jake put together a solid team. Me, Marcus Tank Thompson, Big Dave, and Sarah Steele Stevens. He also mentioned we'd be taking along an apprentice, some kid whose father was a big-shot local venue owner. I figured having an extra set of hands would be helpful, and teaching newcomers is part of the job. That's how we all started, after all. This kid, Tyler, turned out to be about as useful as a screen door on a submarine, with an ego that could fill an arena. During our drive to the venue in the truck, he wouldn't shut up about his expertise. "I've been mixing bands since I was 15, he bragged, scrolling through his phone. "I've probably got more experience than most of you guys." Tank and I exchanged knowing looks in the rearview mirror. We arrived at the festival grounds and started unloading our gear. 2 digital mixing consoles and roughly 20 kilowatts of sound equipment for the main system, plus about 8 kilowatts for stage monitors. Heavy stuff that requires everyone's participation to move safely, except Tyler had other ideas. After helping with one rack case, on wheels mind you, he announced, "Look, I'm an audio engineer, not a roadie. I don't do manual labor." "Everyone does the heavy lifting," Steele said firmly. "It's part of the job." Tyler just shrugged and wandered off toward the food trucks. We managed fine without him, getting everything positioned and secured within about 90 minutes. We'd just started running cables when Tyler mysteriously reappeared, holding a smoothie. "What can I do to help?" he asked, as if he hadn't just disappeared for over an hour. I said, "You can help Steele with the speaker connections." Tyler scoffed. "I don't take orders from chicks." Steele, who'd earned her nickname through both her strength and her nerves of steel, was a veteran FOH engineer who'd worked with some major touring acts. She was also an expert in Krav Maga, which made his comment even more ill-advised. Instead of unleashing her fury, she gave him her notorious death smile. "Well, sunshine, looks like you've got a lot to learn about modern sound engineering." While I handled the front-of-house setup, Tank and Big Dave tackled the monitor system. Later, I returned to find Steele looking particularly annoyed. Tyler had somehow managed to cross-wire nearly every amp connection, despite the clearly labeled ports and color-coded cables. I pulled Tyler aside. "Listen, you need to understand the basics of signal flow and proper connections. It's fundamental to being a sound engineer." "Whatever," he rolled his eyes. "I'm here to mix, not play with cables. That's tech stuff." "Tech stuff is sound engineering," I replied, trying to maintain my patience. "Every bit of it matters." "Please," he snorted. "You're just glorified roadies. I've mixed plenty of shows at my dad's venue." The day continued with similar incidents. During soundcheck, Tyler kept trying to take over the console, making rookie mistakes that could have damaged the equipment. When we assigned him to help with stage changes, he consistently mislabeled mic plots and rearranged connections to make them neater. The breaking point came during his supervised mixing attempt with a simple folk duo. He immediately pushed the main faders to the red, nearly causing feedback that could have blown the speakers. "Stop!" I grabbed his hands away from the console. "You can't just max everything out, you need to listen and balance." "I know what I'm doing," he snapped. "This is how we do it at my dad's place." "Yeah, and I bet the bands love having their eardrums blown out," Steele muttered from behind us. After 2 exhausting days of similar incidents, we reached the teardown phase. Everyone was dead tired, but we all pitched in to pack up, except Tyler, who had vanished again. We waited 20 minutes, then spent another half-hour searching the grounds. No sign of him. "You know what?" Tank said, checking his watch. "It's 3 a.m. We've got a 5-hour drive ahead, and this kid hasn't helped with a single loadout all weekend." "All in favor of leaving him?" Big Dave asked. The vote was unanimous. The next afternoon, Jake called me. "Want to explain why Tyler's dad had to drive 500 miles round trip at 3 a.m. to pick up his son?" I gave him the full rundown of the weekend's events. Jake laughed. "That explains the angry voicemail I got. You know what? His dad still owes me money from 3 different shows. I think we're even now." The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be the person fighting with my homeowners association, but here we are. This all started about 8 months ago when I came home from work to find a large metal barrier installed right in front of my garage entrance, completely blocking my ability to park my car inside. No notice, no warning, nothing. Just a giant metal pole sticking out of the ground that prevented me from accessing my own garage. I've lived in this townhouse community for about 5 years now. It's a nice enough place. Well-maintained common areas, reasonable monthly fees, and generally drama-free. I specifically bought this unit because it had its own private garage, which is pretty rare in our area. The garage entrance is off a small private road that runs behind the row of townhouses. That first evening, I had to park in one of the visitor spots and lug my groceries around to the front door instead of being able to pull into my garage like normal. I immediately called the Homeowners Association Management Company's after-hours line. Hi, this is John from Unit 127. Someone has installed some kind of barrier pole blocking access to my garage. I can't get my car in. Can you please have someone remove it right away? The woman on the other end sounded bored. Oh yes, the new security barriers were installed today along the back road. They're meant to prevent non-residents from using it as a cut-through. But I live here. I need to access my garage. No one told me this was happening. The barriers were approved by the board at last month's meeting. You'll need to submit a request form to get a key. I was getting frustrated. I wasn't notified about any of this. I own this unit and garage. You can't just block access without my permission. Sir, the Homeowners Association has authority over all common areas including the access road. The barriers are now part of our security infrastructure. If you'd like a key, you'll need to fill out Form 27B and submit it along with a $150 processing fee. $150 to access my own garage that I already pay for? This is ridiculous. I want to speak to someone on the board. The board meets on the second Tuesday of each month. You're welcome to attend and voice your concerns during the open forum portion. I hung up in frustration. The next morning, I sent a strongly worded email to the Homeowners Association Board President Karen Wilson, demanding the immediate removal of the barrier. I explained that I was never notified, never agreed to have my access blocked, and considered this an unauthorized modification affecting my property rights. Karen's response was infuriating in its condescension. Dear Mr. Stevens, the security enhancement project was properly noticed and approved through appropriate channels. The board has authority under Section 7.3 of the CC&Rs to implement security measures as deemed necessary. If you'd like access, please submit the required form and fee. Otherwise, there are ample visitor parking spaces available. Thank you for your cooperation. I replied, I am not a visitor. I am an owner requesting access to my deeded garage. Please provide documentation showing you have the authority to restrict my access without consent. No response. I spent the next few weeks documenting everything and researching my rights. I took photos and videos of the barrier. I pulled my deed and property documents. I even hired a real estate attorney for a consultation. The attorney confirmed what I suspected. While the Homeowners Association did have broad authority over common areas, they likely couldn't unilaterally block access to my garage without proper notice and my consent as the property owner. He advised sending a formal demand letter. I had the attorney draft a strongly worded letter outlining the legal issues and demanding removal of the barrier within 10 days. The Homeowners Association's attorney responded with a bunch of boilerplate about their authority under the CC&Rs, but didn't directly address the garage access issue. Meanwhile, I kept attending the monthly board meetings to protest during public comments. Karen would just smile condescendingly and say, "Your concerns are noted. Next speaker, please." I started talking to my neighbors and discovered I wasn't the only one upset about the barriers. Several other owners with garages were equally angry about having their access blocked without warning, but most had just paid the $150 fee to get it over with. "Don't bother fighting it," my neighbor Tom told me. Karen and her clique run this place like their personal fiefdom. Last year, they tried charging people $500 if their holiday decorations weren't taken down by January 2nd. But I refused to cave. This was about principle now. They couldn't just arbitrarily restrict access to my property without due process. I kept careful records of every interaction and expense related to this issue. After 60 days of getting nowhere, I filed a lawsuit in civil court seeking an injunction to remove the barrier plus damages for loss of use of my garage. The Homeowners Association's initial response was to try intimidating me with threats of huge legal fees. The association will vigorously defend its right to implement security measures, their attorney wrote. Should you pursue litigation, we will seek to recover all costs from you. I wasn't backing down. I look forward to explaining to a judge how you unilaterally blocked my deeded property access without notice or consent, I replied through my attorney. The case slowly wound its way through the court system. Discovery revealed some interesting facts. There were no actual documented cut-through problems on the back road. The security enhancement appeared to be Karen's pet project, pushed through with minimal discussion. The board minutes showed no proper notice to affected owners. The real smoking gun came when we obtained emails showing Karen knew the barriers would restrict garage access, but deliberately avoided notifying owners because she didn't want to deal with complaints. She figured people would just pay the fee rather than fight it. Things really heated up at the next board meeting after those emails came out. Several other owners were now openly calling for Karen's resignation. She tried to adjourn the meeting early, but people refused to leave. "You deliberately deceived us," one owner shouted. "This is a clear abuse of power." Karen's face was bright red. "I have acted within my authority as board president. These barriers are for everyone's safety and security." "Safety from what?" another owner demanded. "There was never any problem until you manufactured one." I stayed quiet and let the other owners vent their anger. Karen had clearly lost control of the meeting. Her usual smug attitude was replaced by barely contained rage as she gathered her things and stormed out. The next day, I got a call from the Homeowners Association's attorney wanting to discuss settlement. They offered to remove my barrier and refund the legal fees I'd spent so far. I declined. "I want all the barriers removed and written acknowledgement that they were installed improperly," I replied, "plus reimbursement of all associated costs for everyone affected." They countered with various offers, but I held firm. Finally, after several rounds of negotiations, they agreed to remove all barriers within 30 days, refund all key fees collected, pay my legal costs, issue a formal apology, revise the Homeowners Association bylaws to require owner notification and consent for any changes affecting property access, hold a special election for new board members. The settlement was finalized about 2 weeks ago. The barriers came down last week. Karen resigned from the board rather than face a recall vote. Several other longtime board members stepped down as well. I'm still documenting everything as the changes are implemented just in case. But it feels good to have stood up to their overreach and won. Sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even if it would be easier to just pay the fee and stay quiet. The whole experience has gotten me more involved in the Homeowners Association. I'm planning to run for the board myself in the special election. Several neighbors have encouraged me to run for president, but I'm not sure I want that level of responsibility. For now, I'm just happy to have my garage access back and to have helped bring some positive changes to our community governance. Update. It's been about 6 months since my last post, and a lot has happened that I want to share. After all the support I received from my initial post, I figured you'd want to know how things turned out. First, the special election happened as planned. Despite my initial reluctance, I did end up running for the board after several neighbors practically begged me to put my name in. The election had the highest turnout in our Homeowners Association's history. Over 85% of owners participated. I won a seat along with 4 other new members, all reform-minded owners who were fed up with the old regime's tactics. At our first meeting, the new board elected me as president. I tried to decline, but the other members insisted. They felt my experience fighting the barrier issue made me the right person to lead the reforms we needed. I finally accepted on the condition that we implement some serious changes to how the Homeowners Association operates. The first thing we did was hire a new management company. The old one had been too cozy with Karen and the previous board, often implementing their decisions without proper documentation or oversight. We found a highly rated company that specializes in transparent Homeowners Association management. During the transition, we discovered some concerning financial irregularities. The previous board had been rather loose with spending authorization, often approving large expenditures without getting the required competitive bids. The barrier project itself had cost nearly 3 times what similar systems would have, and the contractor happened to be Karen's brother-in-law's company. This goes way beyond just the barriers. Our new treasurer Sarah told me after reviewing the books. There are dozens of inflated contracts and questionable expenses over the past few years. We hired an independent auditor to go through everything. Their report was eye-opening. While they didn't find explicit fraud, there were numerous instances of poor financial controls and conflicts of interest. The previous board had treated the Homeowners Association's money like their personal slush fund. The audit revealed that Karen and several other former board members had regularly used Homeowners Association funds for personal expenses, disguising them as community improvements or administrative costs. They had even used Homeowners Association money to pay for their personal legal consultation about the barrier lawsuit before it was filed. I called an emergency community meeting to share the findings. The room was packed. The total amount of questionable spending over the past 3 years comes to approximately $157,000, I announced to gasps from the crowd. This represents about 15% of our total operating budget during that period. "What are we going to do about it?" someone shouted. "We've already contacted our insurance company about filing a claim under our directors and officers liability policy," I explained. "We're also consulting with our attorney about potential legal action against the former board members to recover funds." Karen showed up at this meeting, probably expecting to defend herself. But when she saw the detailed financial documentation we had prepared, she quickly left. The next day, her attorney contacted us offering to resolve any outstanding issues. After several rounds of negotiations, Karen and 3 other former board members agreed to repay a total of $98,000 to the Homeowners Association. They also signed agreements acknowledging their improper conduct and agreeing never to serve on the board again. In return, we agreed not to pursue legal action against them personally. The recovery of these funds allowed us to tackle some long-delayed maintenance projects without raising dues. We also implemented new financial controls, including requiring 3 competitive bids for any project over $5,000, monthly financial statements posted online for all owners to review, a new conflict of interest policy prohibiting contracts with relatives required board training on fiduciary responsibility, annual independent audits, but the biggest changes were in how we communicate with owners. We created a new website where all Homeowners Association documents, meeting minutes, and financial reports are posted. We started streaming board meetings online so people who can't attend in person can still participate. We even created an owner forum where people can discuss issues and suggest improvements. Remember Tom, my neighbor who told me not to bother fighting the barrier? He came up to me after a recent meeting. "I have to admit I was wrong," he said. "Standing up to them was exactly what this place needed. The whole atmosphere here has changed." He's right. The community feels different now. People are more engaged, more cooperative. When issues come up, we handle them through open discussion and proper procedures, not arbitrary decrees. We recently had a situation where several owners wanted to install solar panels. Under the old board, this would have been automatically rejected. Instead, we formed a committee to study the issue, got input from all owners, and developed reasonable guidelines that protect property values while still allowing sustainable energy improvements. The barrier incident also led to some unexpected positive changes in state law. Our case caught the attention of a state representative who lives in another homeowners association-governed community. She introduced legislation requiring homeowners associations to provide proper notice and get owner consent before restricting access to deeded property. "Your fight with that barrier helped expose a gap in state law," she told me when I testified at the legislative hearing. "Homeowners associations serve an important purpose, but they need proper oversight and limitations." The bill passed with broad bipartisan support and goes into effect next month. Several other states are now considering similar legislation. As for me, I've actually come to enjoy serving on the board. It's work, but it's satisfying to help run the community properly and fairly. We just had our annual meeting last week, and owners voted to extend the new board's terms for another year. Karen still lives in the community, but keeps a very low profile now. I see her occasionally when walking my dog. She usually looks away quickly and hurries inside. I heard through the grapevine that she tried to sell her unit a few months ago but couldn't get her asking price. Apparently, potential buyers Google the property address and find news stories about the barrier incident and financial misconduct. The barriers themselves, we sold them for scrap metal and used the money to install better lighting along the back road, after getting proper owner approval, of course. The only remnant is a small patch of different colored asphalt where they were installed. Looking back, I'm glad I fought this battle. It would have been easier to just pay the $150 fee like everyone else initially did. But sometimes you have to stand up to bullies and abuse of power, even when it's difficult and expensive. The end result was worth it, not just getting rid of the barriers, but helping create positive change in our community. Last week, a new owner moved in down the street. During our welcome meeting, another new policy we implemented, she told me she chose our community specifically because she had read about how we handled the barrier situation. "I wanted to live somewhere with transparent, accountable management," she said. "Places like this are rare." That made me smile. Sometimes fighting for what's right creates ripples you never expected. Our community isn't perfect, but it's now a place where rules are fair, communication is open, and everyone's rights are respected. That's worth far more than the time and effort it took to get here. And yes, I can park in my garage again without any problems. The next one is a malicious compliances story. I work for a visitor attraction in London. Generally, we are out on the floor answering questions, etc. We had a dedicated team that worked in the control room, usually supervisors or those that wanted to become supervisors. Normally 1 or 2 people in the control room. They were never ever on the floor if they could help it. They watched the CCTV and controlled the breaks, lunches, etc. For instance, if a visitor sets off an alarm, they would call us, and we would investigate the alarm. Management decided to pull the supervisors out onto the floor and train floor personnel to be in the control room. Good idea on paper, but in practice, supervisors didn't want to go on the floor, and those on the floor didn't want to go into the control room. Some of us already worked in the control room as we relieved them for breaks, lunches, etc. Basically, if you were in the control room, you stayed in there. First training week went something like this. Someone that knew the control room training 3 or 4 of the floor people. Needless to say, that put us short-staffed on the floor and management had to go on the floor to cover. As, how hard could it be? It will only be a week, then I can go back to my cushy desk job. First day I was training 3 or 4 floor staff and management supervisors were on the floor. Management told me treat them like normal floor staff. Okay, no problem. I asked everyone that I was training normal floor staff. We all got big smiles on our faces. Not even 10 minutes goes by in radio call. Can one of you bring the keys for the front door so we can let the public in? It's a 5 minutes walk from control to the front door. I radio one of the management on the floor. Come to control and pick up the keys and take to front door. I get a phone call. Just have so-and-so bring them over. There's 4 of you in there. As per procedure, nobody is allowed out of control room. Management take 5 minutes to get to control and then take the keys over to front door. So we are late opening. Next radio call. Which key is it? It's number XX. They open the doors. Alarm goes off. Control, why did alarm go off? You need to call control to let us know exactly when to take alarm off. Procedure. All of this is written down. Procedures must be followed. Now that the public is in, alarms start going off for various reasons. The public loves going through doors that say door is alarmed. Normal stuff. I start radio calls to management on the floor. Charlie 3 go to door X, Charlie 3 go to door X, etc., etc. Delta 4 relieve Charlie 3 for theater lunch. Lunchtime, I get phone calls from people who haven't been relieved for theater lunch on time. Management hasn't figured out that travel time between your post and the break area is not included in your lunch break. If you have an hour lunch and it takes you 10 minutes walking time to get there, then basically your lunch is 40 minutes. 10 minutes to go from your post to break room and 10 minutes to go back to post. Normal control room staff knew this and would start lunches early to give everyone as much as possible a full lunch. More radio calls. Charlie 3, can you check the toilet? Report of water on the floor. Charlie 3, can you go to X visitor, wants to use a voucher. Actually, Charlie 3, go to door X, but I'm with a visitor. Doors take priority. Charlie 3 inches. For the rest of the day, we ran management crazy. Everything in the procedures was adhered to. Count the empty spaces in the car park. Check locks on the emergency gates. Check toilets, men's and women's, to see if they need to be refilled with toilet paper. Look for lights out. Fill in your task book, etc. Next day, needless to say, I wasn't in the control room. Didn't matter. The tone was set. Didn't matter who was in there. The rest of the week went by the same. Everyone that followed me ran management nuts. Management, to their credit, changed some things after that. Black sneakers can now be worn. More break rooms closer to posts have been opened. Procedures have been loosened up. Control people are back in control, and floor people are on the floor. Everyone is now trained in the control room, but they only have to work it if they want. Still was a glorious week. The next one is an entitled people story. This happened last spring, and honestly, the whole situation still pisses me off. So around April 2024, one of my uncles visited us from another country. He got scammed by a company. He spent nearly $500K in our currency to start this business with them. Now, at the time, I was unemployed due to getting sick, so I helped him out. He doesn't know how to handle emails and make orders, so I handled that for him. I also reviewed resumes for him to which employee to hire. I also did the interview. I went to meetings with the company's marketing advisors, etc. Well, with how much I've been helping him out, he decided to make me the manager of the business. I agreed, since I needed the money and I've always wanted to start my own business as well, and this was close to my dream. So, for an entire month, I did everything for him. I went out to buy materials we needed to decorate the shop. I canceled all of my plans to make sure I was there to help out with the planning. I hired a good crew and I took care of everyone. I would wake up at 4 a.m. and won't go to bed until 11 p.m., and I did this every day, no breaks. I joined training classes with the crew and took training seriously so that I can at least help out in the shop full time. I had my best friend help me out with making an online page for the shop. And she and I planned a photo shoot with the products we sell. My best friend literally went out of her way to help me out. She helped me regulate the page, and we also made plans on doing deliveries. The first 5 weeks was flawless, although our location was not ideal, especially with the prices the company had provided. Well, every other week we would have a meeting with the marketing team. They don't know what they were doing, telling us to keep on advertising by giving out flyers. We were doing that, and 2 of my crew already went to the next village to advertise. Then they said that whoever was giving out the flyers should go to other establishments to advertise, which is highly illegal BTW, and even told us that my crew shouldn't take a break until they brought in customers. There was heat wave at that time, literally reached 40 Celsius, and that's not the main Hest index too. Well, I was vocal and I went against their ideas. My uncle trusted the marketing team, though. He told me, they're the ones with the degrees, they know what they're doing, they clearly don't know what they're doing. Well, on the 6th week mark, I got sick because I never took a single break. Well, that was enough excuse for the team and my uncle to fire me. That actually backfired because my crew hated how my uncle managed the business and they stopped working hard and even lost interest. Then, on the 7th week mark, the shop closed. This made my uncle furious. He blamed me and said that my lack of hard work caused his business to fail. And then, he called the village officials for a meeting, accusing me squatting. The thing is, I lived in our family home since I was born, so that's 28 years while he only lived here for 20 years. 50 years he lived in a different village than a different country. It was awful. He would punish me for no reason. Like, he would cut off the electricity when I'm resting, he turned off the Wi-Fi when I was doing an online interview, he threw away my food that I paid for. It got to the point where I didn't eat anything for a week, except for water and a slice of bread every other day. My best friend found out and she sent me money so that I could just eat. At that point, I was done. When he went back abroad, I blocked him and told my cousin everything. My uncle messaged my aunt telling her how I was ruining his relationship with his son, but I didn't say anything that wasn't true. My own crew witnessed all the crap my uncle gave me. Well, now we're not talking anymore. My aunt didn't really blame me since she herself got annoyed by her own brother's stupidity. Just last month, my aunt had to go to bank to send him money because he got scammed yet again, and I am not looking forward for him to come visit us again in 2 years. The next one is an entitled parent story. I've been struggling financially ever since I became an adult due to unstable jobs, unemployment, and random car repairs. I've lived with my parents since I was 15, so they feel like they need to raise me again since my grandparents did it incorrectly. The problem is, they are still treating me as if I'm a teenager that needs constant parental control and supervision, even though I am 20 years old and it's really messing with my mental health. When I was 19, I finally acquired a stable job and a car, so I tried to move into my friend's house. My mom was okay with it as long as I am happy and safe, but my dad absolutely freaked out and told me I'm making a stupid decision and I will duck the whole family and my future over if I do this, and overall just trying his hardest to guilt trip me into thinking I'm doing something wrong just by leaving. When I did pack up my most valuable stuff and leave, my dad begged me to come home and talk it out with him and work on the business he spent all his money on. I foolishly obliged, and when I came home, he spent 3 hours trying to talk me out of it, and I listened to him patiently. Then when it was finally my turn to speak, I tried to remind him that I am a legal adult, even if I don't look like one, and I'll be fine on my own. He wouldn't even let me get through 2 sentences before he interrupted me and screamed, "No! That's childish, foolish, and childish. You are not an adult. Your frontal lobe isn't fully developed. You can't make it on your own. This isn't the 1950s. This made me feel like crap, and I knew he planned on using that dialogue no matter what I tried to retort with, and neither of us were going to change our minds no matter what. Eventually, we made an agreement that I will pay a small amount of rent to my friends for a room in their house, for less than half the price normal rent would cost, but spend half of my week at my parents' house and go back and forth. He used the business we started as an excuse to keep me there, always calling me and cutting my time short, demanding I come home because there's work that needs to be done. I didn't want to ruin our relationship because he spent a lot of money getting it started, but it hasn't really gone anywhere even though I do work on it anyways. My original plan was to just slowly move all my stuff to my friend's house and eventually I'll fully move in with my friends. This was a few months back and I know he was being crappy and manipulative, but I wasn't sure how else to deal with it. About a month and a half into this ordeal, someone crashed into my car and destroyed it, and because of this, I lost my job so I could no longer pay rent, and I was forced to move back in with my parents. When the insurance finally paid out, I accidentally bought a lemon of a car and it bankrupted me with a bunch of random mechanical issues, and in the end left me stranded on the side of the road with a $500 tow yard fee that was paid by my mom because I already spent all my money from my new job on the last repair. A few weeks ago, bought an old running car from a family friend for $250 and spent all of my last paycheck getting the tires replaced and fixing the transmission problem it had. Thankfully, my mechanic said this car was in a way better shape the other two I had combined, so I shouldn't have to worry about unexpected future repairs eating my wallet up. I am currently broken in debt to my mom because she helped me pay for the new car and my repairs and the tow yard and everything. I'll be able to pay her off with my next paycheck, but it'll eat half of it up. They found a house they like that's closer to my job, 15 minutes instead of 45 minutes away, and applied to rent it. And I didn't want to leave them in the mud, so I agreed to help them rent it and send my pay stubs. I think I might have made a mistake, but I'm not sure what else I was supposed to do. My parents expect me to live with them until I finish school, and I don't want that. My dad is delusional and thinks I need to be protected, and I'm immediately going to become homeless or kidnapped or whatever if I move out, so he expects me to live with them until I finish school. I hate living with my parents because even though they look out for me and they feed me and always save me when I have a pay for something I am unable to, my dad has an extremely toxic and clingy personality, and I'm not happy having to deal with him every goddamn day. He's always insulting and demeaning my hobbies and acting like I'm wasting time when I'm being creative and working on my own personal projects. Whenever he comes home from work and I'm in my room, he calls my cell phone and acts like I'm doing something wrong by having alone time and, God forbid, doing art instead of being in the living room rewatching some stupid show with him or doing chores. He's always making my dating life his business and trying to give his advice or input when I don't want it, and asks if every girl I go on one date with is my GF now, and I think it's really frustrating and uncomfortable how he forces me to label what I'm doing and tell him what I'm up to all the time. Every time I'm out of the house outside of my work hours, he just has to call me and ask me what I'm doing, and if I don't answer the phone, he gets all pissy when I get home and tells me how worried he was and how crappy it was of me not to tell him, even though I do it because I'm trying to prove the point that I'm independent and I'll just call them if it's an emergency. I know I still look like a troubled teenager in his eyes, but I really am an adult, and I honestly hate being around him every day because I hate how he treated me when I was 17, and I think our personalities just clash too much, and we really aren't compatible to live together without fighting for control and my own privacy. I know for a fact that I would have created and sold so much more art if it went for him always trying to shut my creativity down and getting mad at me for wasting my time doing personal projects instead of chores or whatever. He is just overall very manipulative and clingy and controlling, and I feel as if I can't fully be myself and teach my full potential as long as I live with, because he always has to use his parental authority on me. I'm not okay with the way he continues to treat me like a child, and I just desperately want to live on my own without him constantly taking my spare time and getting in my business and having to listen to him throw an adult temper tantrum at least once a week. I'm just trying to figure out how to get my own place without his interference. I already have a few friends who would be down to move with me. I think I'm going to save up for my own rental and post my room on FB and Craigslist so I can move and find someone to take my place to help them pay rent so they don't get evicted. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.